When you buy a home in an HOA, you're actually buying into a system of rules. They have the power to control your behavior. The government found a shortcut. Make the homeowners pay for it. And you agree to them when you sign your contract and your settlement paperwork. Let's be real. That did not erase the idea behind them. Control. You've seen this before, right? The matching mailboxes, the perfect lawns, the same muted neutral color on every house. It looks nice. But here's the thing. This isn't just a neighborhood. This is something bigger, something that's quietly controlling millions of people's lives, and you probably signed up for it without quite realizing. I'm talking about HOAs, or Homeowners Associations, and they are covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or CCRs. And 75 million Americans live in HOAs, collecting around $100 billion in dues annually. So how did we get here? Why does nearly 1 in 4 Americans live under these rules? And why do they have so much power over your house? To understand HOAs, we've got to go back to the early 1900s. Back then, developers used something called restrictive covenants. Basically, they were promises written into the property deed, things like, you can't build a factory here, or you can't paint your house a crazy color. They sounded harmless, right? Except a lot of these rules were actually, you guessed it, racist. Like, you can't sell this house to anyone who isn't white. Yes, that was legal until 1948. Before HOAs were the rule makers for paint color and mailbox designs, they were actually something else, tools for segregation. The Shelleys were a black family who bought a house in St. Louis, and their white neighbors, the Kramers, sued to stop them because of one of these restrictive covenants in the property deed. This case goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the court ruled that private citizens can write these restrictive covenants in their deeds all they want, but the government can't enforce them, as that would be a violation of the 14th Amendment. It was a landmark civil rights victory. But even though racial covenants were struck down in 1948, let's be real, that didn't erase the idea behind them. Control. Neighborhoods still wanted to protect what they saw as quality, and developers still wanted a way to market exclusivity. So they just swapped out the language. Instead of saying who could live there, the rules started focusing on what homes looked like and how the community was maintained. That shift from exclusion to regulation became the DNA of modern HOAs. After World War II, the suburbs were exploding. Millions of families were leaving the cities for more safety, space, stability. Everybody wanted a piece of the American dream, right? We all know it well. The house, the yard, the white picket fence. But cities couldn't afford to maintain all these new roads and parks and pools, so the government found a shortcut, as they always do. Make the homeowners pay for it. Federal Housing Administration started pushing developers to create HOAs, basically saying, hey, you want a federally backed loan? Cool. Add an HOA to your subdivision. And with that, HOAs became the financial backbone of the suburban boom. No taxpayer dollars, no city maintenance, just a lot of power in the hands of a private board made up of volunteers and your neighbors. By the 1980s, HOAs became a ubiquitous part of the American suburbs. Developers loved them because they could sell neighborhoods as exclusive and well-maintained with amenities like pools and tennis courts and even private lakes. And of course, cities loved them because HOAs picked up the tab for the roads, sidewalks, and green spaces that they didn't want to maintain. And by the early 2000s, HOAs dominated the housing market. They promised stability, safety, and rising property values. But those promises came with strings attached. Rules and restrictions, and power that could shape people's lives in unexpected ways. So here's where HOAs stop feeling like a friendly neighborhood group and start acting like a mini government. They have the power to fine you for almost anything: the wrong paint color, leaving trash cans out too long, weeds in your yard, and those fines can pile up daily until you comply. If you don't pay, the HOA can place a lien on your home, which means you can't sell or refinance until the debt is cleared. And in many states, HOAs can even foreclose on your home over a few $100s of unpaid dues, even if you're completely current on your mortgage. On top of that, they have the power to control behavior, from what holiday decorations you choose to put up, to noise restrictions, to rules about political signs, or even flags in your yard. That's not just enforcing standards, that's some serious power. But before we crown HOAs as the villains of suburbia, let's be fair, right? There are reasons why millions of people like HOAs. HOAs help keep property values by making sure your neighbor doesn't, turn their yard into a car lot or a junkyard. They pay for stuff that cities won't, like private roads, street lights, even snow removal. They give you access to shared perks like pools and gyms and parks, things that would cost a fortune on your own and you probably wouldn't do anyway. So yeah, those monthly dues might sting the pocket a little bit, but for a lot of people, the trade-off is worth it. Today, more than 365,000 HOAs govern around 75 million Americans. That's about 1 in every 4 homeowners, and together they collect over $100 billion in dues every year. Think about that. $100 billion throwing through organizations run by volunteers or your neighbors, or sometimes by private management companies with little or weak public oversight. So here's the question. Are HOAs the ultimate tool for keeping neighborhoods nice, or a slow slide into private government overreach? And here's the part nobody thinks about. When you buy a home in an HOA, you're not just buying 4 walls and a roof. You're buying into a system of rules, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And you agree to them when you sign your contract and your closing paperwork. So let me know in the comments below. Do you think HOAs are more about community or control? Type community if you love them, type control if you can't stand them, tell me why, and I'll see you in the next one.